I was born the seventh of 8 children. My father was atheist and my mother was Jewish, so church was not part of our everyday life. But we lived next door to a Southern Baptist church, and behind our farm was an activities building. So one day when I was 6, I was out picking corn and okra and everything out in the garden, and I noticed all these kids going into this building. Well, I dropped what I was doing and climbed the fence and went into that building, and RA basketball was going on. And I asked the guy if I could join in, and he said sure. So I started playing basketball, and afterwards the leader of the group asked if I knew who God was, and my first response was using God's name in vain, because that's what I had heard in my house growing up, and that's the only name that I heard. He had a first and last name like I had a first and last name. And the guy said, no, and he started explaining about Jesus Christ and God the Father and the compassion and the love, and upon that I accepted Christ as my personal Savior and started going to church on Sundays. Well, my father started asking me where I was at on Sunday mornings, and I told him I was next door at the church, and he said that he would not allow me to go to the church. Well, being hard-headed like I am, I continued to go to the church, and that's when my father started physically abusing me. Well, as my brothers and sisters got older, we moved to another part of town, and the closest church to our home was 11 blocks. So at 8 years old, I would walk 11 blocks to and from church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and again, I would get home and I would get physically abused for doing that. Well, at this church, they had a deaf ministry, and there was an older deaf couple there, Bill and Estelle Cameron, who one day stopped me and wrote a note asking why I was so bruised up. And I wrote back that when I came to church, I got home, my father would physically abuse me for coming to the church. Well, Mr. Cameron wrote on a note and asked if I'd like to come live with him. And I thought, well, sure. So that Sunday we went to the house, and they wrote a note to my dad saying, we're going to take Brian and raise him. Well, you think, how would that be permitted? How is that possible? We have to understand that my father was chief of police, and him being turned in for abuse would not set well with the authorities. And so that day I collected my belongings and I moved in with Bill and Estelle Cameron, who I considered my parents. They saw something in me that God had shown them, and their compassion and love and their teaching and training and their setting the course of my life has changed my life. Because where I am today is where they started directing my life at the age of 8, training me in the direction of deaf ministry. So if it wasn't for their love and compassion, I would not be where I am today. And the thing that they saw in me is what God is doing through me here at Brentwood Baptist Deaf Church and Brentwood Baptist Church. And His message is being seen and sent all across the world because of the love and compassion that this couple saw. So I would not be in deaf work if it wasn't for being adopted by deaf parents.